Okay, 12:30. Okay, Jared. Okay. See Prince. Zachary's back there. Grover. Right there. Okay. Wyatt. Wyatt Greason. He hasn't been in class. Eric. Right there. Okay. Ethan's back there. Right there. Okay. Sebastian. Right there. Okay. Catan. I think he's here. No, he's not here. And Brianna's at the back. Okay. All right. So today we're going to go over, first of all, the problem that I graded. I graded this one, the Unit 1 programming exercise, because it was due last night at 11:59. And most of the students did okay on it, but there was a couple people didn't do both their flowchart and their pseudocode. A couple people did the wrong problem. Some of these may have been my online class, so I can't remember. I get them all confused. But we're going to go over it real quick in class, and then we're going to do it in, even though you weren't required to do it in Python, we're going to see it run in PyCharm too. So if you look at what this one was, and I should have put comments. Some of them I even did a little audio comment if it wasn't right. So this one, what you were to do is to go to Lucidchart, and it was problem number 6. Number 2, there wasn't any problem with that. I'm not going over that. That was just copied out of the book. So, but with this one, if you went to Lucidchart, and I didn't see anybody in this class had a problem with saving it to PDF. That was good because my other class did. Let's see. Get this. So this problem on number 6, and let me go ahead and open up Cengage because we're going to look at that anyway. I'll look at chapter 2 today. I don't think anyone in here had trouble getting Cengage because now the 14-day trial is over, so you have to have bought it. Has anyone had trouble doing that? Okay.
Do you know by chance today's my last day, and so I was just wondering for next semester, do you know by chance any courses that do you use it? I think he mentioned like the hardware and operating uses Cengage. I didn't know.
Yeah, I think so. And I know, do you take script programming? Are you taking that?
This is just my first class this semester.
So, I mean, what are you taking next semester?
I haven't decided.
Are you cyber or what are you?
Database or programming.
Oh, database? Okay, that would be Professor Haynes. If you stop by her office, you know where her office is?
No.
Professor Haynes, it's downstairs right in the corner of, it's a glassed-in office, okay, right in the corner as you come in the building from this end. And she's in charge of that program, and so she could tell you exactly which classes are using it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to look at, boy, that's coming up really loud, isn't it? I don't know. Okay, so this particular problem, number 6, was, I'm not going to copy it, but for this one, but I usually do, but put it up here just so I don't have to look at it again. It said to you, assume that your program, your pseudocode, and it says or flowchart, but what did I tell you all to do? Both. Okay, so we're doing both until I tell you different, even if the problem says or. And so it said design a program that accepts 2 input values and does the sum and the difference of those 2 values, right? So if we are doing that, we can do pseudocode, pseudocode first or flowchart, whichever is easier for you to do. You can do that first. I'm going to go ahead and do the pseudocode. So I always change the font big, but you don't have to do that. I just do that because, so hopefully people in the back can see it. So when I'm doing pseudocode, oops, for that problem, I click with start. And I'm gonna have to make this box a great bit big to work. Okay, so I'm gonna have two input variables. So what should my second line say? Input. And then I can name them whatever I want. Maybe just so whatever I name them, I use that variable name throughout. So I'll say num1, comma, num2. Now, I could have done it this way, or I could have actually had two input statements. Either one is correct, whichever way you prefer to do it. And then I have a calculation. Now, some people use the variable name sum, and I didn't count that wrong because in pseudocode it's fine to say sum. But when we get into Python and most other languages, sum is called a keyword. So that means it's already used by Python, so you can't make it a variable name. You could say like sum1 or sumat or something like that, but you can't use just the variable name sum. And the way you know that is when you get into a language editor like say PyCharm or IDLE, it will color, if it's a keyword, it'll make it different than black. And that means, oops, I can't use that unless I add something to it, okay? So it is already a word that's used. So I'm gonna just say my answer, I'm gonna call 1, that's gonna be my variable name, but you could call it anything you want. My answer equals num1 plus num2. And so now what's the next line? The next step, right, subtraction. So can I use my answer 1? No, got to have a different variable name. So I'm just going to call this one my answer 2. You can call it anything you want that makes sense to you. Now, in subtraction, it does make a difference whether it's num2 minus num1 or num1 minus num2, but it did not tell us in the problem which one to subtract, so either one is correct. Okay, it didn't say subtract the first value from the second value. So in this case, I'm just going to put it like this. And then what is the last step? Output. So what do I output? Right. So I'm going to output both of my results, which was my answer 1 in this case and my answer 2. Oops. So let me make this a little bit bigger. There we go. And then I just have my stop. Okay, so now I'm going to do my flow chart. So I have to have a terminator symbol, which is my start. I'll make it a little bigger. Okay, then I have what for my input? Which shape? Parallelogram. So my parallelogram would say my input. So I could say input num1, comma, num2. Now, some people, Ethan, you had 2 parallelograms, but you had them next to each other. So, and you're not the only one that did it that way. But Zachary, these shapes are what you need to be concerned about, because I think you're the one that had different shapes. Okay, so it's important right now, the only shapes that we're using is, and I know if you're designers, he's one of my multimedia students, you like to be creative, right? I'm juggling. So here we have a terminator, we'll use an ellipse, and for input and output, we'll use the parallelogram. And then for our calculations, what do we use? Rectangle. So we're going to go down to the rectangle. And I'm going to put both of my calculation statements in here. You can use two separate ones if you want. My answer 1 equals num1 plus num2. And then I got to make my box a little bigger. And then if I want to, I can just copy that. And change it here. There he is, Catan. Oh, that's right. Okay. Okay, minus. Oops, put the plus in there too, didn't I? Okay, so you could have two rectangles and have each calculation in a separate rectangle. Either way is correct. Then my last thing is output. And what shape is that? Parallelogram. Input and output is data, so that they're always the same shape. So here would say output my answer 1, oops, comma, my answer 2. And actually, I'm going to want to, oh, for some reason, my stayed up on the top line. It shouldn't have. That's part of that same. Well, it doesn't want to move. Let me see here. Delete it. MY. There we go. Okay, and then I just have my terminator symbol, which goes here, which is the stop. And then once I've got that done, and also if I entered number 2 on this sheet, it should be over here too, on here. And so now I would just go up here to File, and mine on my Mac says Download As. On your PC it says Export, right? But you still want to always do it or create a PDF, because then I don't have to open up Lucidchart to look at it, right? So then I would click Download, and I would name it whatever. In that case, I didn't really tell you what to name it, but always put your initials. You're always safe that way, and maybe exercise 1 or something like that, and save. And then that is what I would submit for that exercise. So if you haven't submitted it yet, you will take off late points, but you can still submit it. Okay. All right, any questions about that one, that exercise? Everybody okay with that one? Okay, so now before I go on back into MindTap and start with chapter 2, let's look at exactly what we're doing in this module that we haven't completed and kind of go over the schedule again a little bit. But in the schedule, I have assigned this one, which we did in class last time, 8A. And so you're to do 8B, and it's actually due Monday night. Okay? So I think that's what it says, Monday night at midnight, probably. September, does it not have a time on there? It should. Uh-oh. It does say that? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I thought it was supposed to somewhere. Some student in one class today had the wrong, yeah, it does say 11, had Pacific time in his SIN gauge. I don't know how he got that way. Somehow he got Pacific time, so it was giving him 9:59. So, all right, so this is what's due on Monday night. And I will have another video put up on Monday, which will be my lecture class, because you remember I told you that is, we're going to answer in here any questions you might have about test 1, because next Wednesday you'll come in and you'll take test number 1. So I'm going to talk about it right now, but then also I will talk about it again in the 9:30 class that I'll record and post if you all want to watch it. And we will also cover in that class, let's see, I can't remember if I can cover this because I think I put them till midnight too. So this one, it's similar to this problem, what you do on the test, but it will just be a problem where you have input. I'll tell you how many inputs. You'll have 1 or 2 calculations, and then you'll have output. And the Python problem we're going to do today, like that. We're going to take that problem that we just did and do it in Python together, okay? So this one is due Monday night, and so it's due before the test. And then we're going to do some of chapter 2, which just talks about the portion that talks about variables and constants that we're going to look at today, all right? And those are the only things that will be on test number 1, even though on Monday in that class, I'm going to go ahead with chapter 2. The things at the bottom of chapter 2 that I'm going to look at here in a minute, I'll show you all. The modularization and the hierarchy charts, those won't be required on test number 1, okay? Just what we've been working on right now, solving simple, straightforward problems. There will be a problem like that. You'll read the problem, and then you'll go into Lucidchart and create the pseudocode and flowchart, and that PDF document you'll submit, and then you'll do the short Python. And even if you can't get the Python to run, if you just try it, it won't be worth as much as the pseudocode and the flowchart. That's the important part. So you spend the most time on it and not the Python, okay? That's kind of like an added, you can get an A without even doing the Python, okay? If you get the pseudocode and flowchart right. Because that's the important part right now that I want to concentrate on, even though the Python's a little bit more fun because we get to see the answer, right? All right, so this one is due then on Monday night. And then if you go back, let me go back again. Oops, didn't let me go back to where I wanted to. Oh. Okay, so in module 1, the other thing, this is not, that's just showing up on mine, not yours. So the Unit 2 test you should have taken by midnight last night so that I know that you have an overview of the MindTap. That's the MindTap test. Then we're going to work 2 of these hopefully in class today. And these are the 2 that would be part of the test, knowing what variables are and what constants are, okay? And then this will be active when you come in on Wednesday. Okay, you'll see test 1 over here at the right, and you'll see what it is. Okay, that's how it'll work. You'll go into Canvas, you'll have Unit 1 test instructions, and then you'll submit it there in Canvas. Okay, any questions so far? Everybody see what we're doing? Okay, so now we're going to go over then to MindTap, and we're going to go to chapter 2, and this one, hopefully, if you haven't done these videos on the order of operations, that's one that you want to watch. I don't like to take class time to watch it because it is a little video clip that explains the order of operations. And if you remember that in math, that if there's a long string of addition and multiplication and all that, that's what that talks about, which one of those operations is done first. And the best way that I've always found, if I don't remember that, then I group things with parentheses if it's more than one calculation. And then I know for sure that whatever's in parentheses is going to be done first. And then the answer to it is the next one. So what that's talking about is, like, for instance, if I was saying, let's see, result equals 5 times 7 plus 8 divided by 3, and I didn't know which part of that to do first. If I wanted it to be done correctly, the way I wanted it done, I could do this and this, and then I would know that I got the correct results, right? Because anything that's in parentheses, if you remember your mathematics, is done first. So 5 times 7 would be 35. 8 divided by 3, I made a hard one. Let me make that 8 divided by 2. Okay, 4. So it'd be 35 plus 4. So my result would equal 39, right? Did I say that right? Yeah, that's right. Okay, so that's all this part, this one little video that says, order of operations is talking about if there wasn't parentheses, what would be performed first, okay? All right, and anytime that you have a question when I'm going, just raise your hand. I'll be happy to stop. Okay, so we're going to go down to the actual slides for chapter 2. And I'll show you the part that I'm talking about that you actually were tested over in the Unit 2 test. Oh, where's my slide? There it is. No. And this is in the objectives. I'll show you what part we will not cover on the test, but it's still something that we're going to do in the future, okay? Okay, so chapter 2 is called Elements of High Quality Programs. What that's saying is that these things that we're going to cover in chapter 2 are used in every programming language. These are concepts or principles that you use whether you're coding in Python or C++ or Java. How many in here are just programming majors? Or database too is different. Programming language, anybody? Okay, Jared, you are. So you'll take other languages. That's why the pseudocode and flowcharting is so important, because no matter what language you're coding in, that solves the problem. And that's what's important. The syntax that we're going to learn in here for Python, we're not going to concentrate on. I'm not hoping that you're a Python programmer when you leave here. That's just what we're using to help see if our answers are correct when we do the logic. So in this chapter, we're going to learn about declaring and using variables and constants, performing arithmetic operations. Those two are what we've already been doing, but we haven't talked much about constants, so we're going to cover that today. Then this part of the chapter we'll really concentrate on after the test. On Monday in my 9:30 class, I'll lecture over the rest of this. So you'll want to watch that if you don't understand part of chapter 2 after reading it, okay? Because I won't cover that in class again. All right, so unless we get further today, but I think we're going to do the MindTap problems instead. So data types. We did learn in Python the other day that when you take in a input, it comes in as a string. And what did we have to change it to if we wanted to do a calculation on it? To a number, to an integer or a float, or anyway, it has to be a number, because when it comes in, excuse me, as a string. Oh, thank you. And so in other languages, you are required at the top of the program to declare what type of data it is. So when you look in the book, when we look at our ebook here in MindTap, it's going to show in the pseudocode, if it's a variable name that's number, it'll have num in front of it. Python doesn't require that, but all other languages do. You have to tell it whether it's a string variable or whether it's numeric. And so that's what they're talking about by data types. There's also a data type that we're going to be using in this class called a float. Anybody know what a float is? What's a float value? It can hold a decimal. Very good, right? So that means it's a whole number plus a fraction, right? Decimal fraction. So those are the only three data types, other than we're going to talk a little bit about a Boolean value later on too. But those are what we will be talking about, whether it's a numeric, which consists of numbers that can be used in math. Now, a string is anything not used in math. So say you gave your address where it had the house number. Well, that's a number, but it's still considered a string because we're not going to do math on that number, right? So it's considered a string. There are two types of constants. What's the word constant mean? Stays the same, doesn't change. Whereas variables, vary means it can change, right? But we can actually have variables that are constant in our program. In other words, we can establish or initialize a variable's value at the top of the program, which is what some of you did in that exercise 1, is you set your variable equal to a number, a value. Well, that's actually considered a constant, which means every time you run the program, it was going to run with those two values, and it didn't give you an opportunity to change it. Okay, so that's why when we do the pseudocode and flowchart, unless it says it's a constant, then you don't give it a value. So numeric constants are constants that contain numbers only, and the number does not change throughout the whole program. And what you're going to see in the one that we do in MindTap, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the purpose of a constant in there. String constant, also known as alphanumeric values, can contain both alphabetic characters and numbers, like the address line that I talked about. Strings are enclosed in quotation marks. I don't know if you remember the other day when we did the Python program and we said, please enter something, and we put it in quotes, because that's a string and it's going to print to the screen exactly what you put between the quotes. And that it won't change that. So anything that's not in quotes, it's going to assume that it's a variable name, and it'll put what the value of that variable is at the time of output. Okay. We're going to see that here in a minute. So declarations, this is where I was talking about that all other languages, you declare all the variables at the top of the page. So like in this one that we did with the input number 1 and number 2, and then we had a my answer 1 and a my answer 2. All of those were variables. So we actually had 4 variables, and they would all be declared at the top. So if I were to declare those variables, then I could do something that's called a comment, and I could say declarations, and that would mean that the browser or the interpreter of Python wouldn't look at that line because it has those slashes there. That means it's a comment just for the programmer to see. So it's a note to myself that here's where my declarations go. So here I could say, if I was writing in other languages, I might say num1, oops, only not capital. So in the book, you'll see this, that they're declaring that this variable is a number. And in other languages, just to make sure there's nothing in that memory location that you're giving that name, then you can initialize it and say 0. So that you want to make sure that when you start out, that there's nothing in there. Because that is just the name of a place in memory. That's what num1 is. And so when I say input to num1, in Python, it doesn't make you initialize, but other languages do, because they want to make sure that maybe the program that ran before stuck something out in that place in memory that you're giving the name num1 now. And there may be something in there. So if you initialize it to 0, then you don't have any problem.
And that's across the board?
With all variables, it's good to do that.
So the first num is just for the computer variable. So computer knows it's a number. The num1 is what we are putting it. It's
It's the identifier.
Okay.
It's the name of it. And then it's called, see, in this chapter, because you optionally, you can give it an initial value. And so what we're, most of the time in every language except for like scripting, like Python, it doesn't require you to do that. But like if you take Java or C++ or any other language, it's going to want you to initialize that variable because that's just a name that you're giving to a memory location out in the computer's memory. And so you want to make sure that it starts out with a 0. Oh, what keeps, oh, that's messages coming to me. So then I could do that with all of my variables and just list them at the top here. I could say num, no. And then I'd say num2 equals 0. And so if I'm just writing in Python, I still can do this just so out of clarity of what my pseudocode is doing. I can write these declarations, but I haven't done that in the beginning because it doesn't, it makes it a little more for you to have to learn. But at the beginning, what you're going to see starting in chapter 2 is the pseudocode and flowchart in the book, and that's what we're going to look at next, will have declarations. And so if that makes sense to you, then you should go ahead and do it.
So in the declarations, you just go, when you make your declaration, like you have listed above, and you start to write your code, do you have to put like an end statement or anything on that statement? Or
No,
okay.
no, because it's, okay, so like here, I think that, yeah, here's the pseudocode that was in chapter 2, okay? And so it has declarations at the start, and you notice they didn't initialize the value because it said in our rules, that's optional, right? So it does, and throughout this textbook, it will have num or string out there, depending upon what the variable is. And I don't count it wrong if you don't do that in your pseudocode, just simply because we're transferring our pseudocode directly into Python, and Python doesn't require that you put that data type out there. It doesn't even require that you make declarations, but it's a good thing to help you logically to look at the problem and say, okay, how many variables am I going to need? And just go ahead and list those under declarations.
So if that was going to be a constant, what would you do differently?
Okay, that's on our next step. What we would do differently is you would assign it a value. Like my number, you could say my number is always going to be 10. Okay, anytime it's used in the problem. And so I would also change, you don't have to, all caps. Normally it's in all caps. It isn't required by any language that you do that, but it's easier to look at your code and say, oh, that one's a constant. Now, what I was going to show you when we do the mind tap is the reason you use constants is because they're all at the top of your program. And maybe you have a program that's 200 lines and my number, you decide to change it to 10 and it was 5. Well, if my number is used 15 times in those lines of code, you have to go in and change it every time. But if you make a constant variable, then you can just change it at once at the top of the program. Okay, we'll see how that works in MindTap here in a minute. Okay, so if I was going, but I am going to, let's go out of here and let's go into PyCharm, okay? If you have PyCharm open. This is the one that I did last class, but then we're going to do a different one. Okay, this is the one that I had you code exercise 1, problem number 6. And so that's the one that you got graded on, right? Well, here's the Python for it, or one way to do it. Why do I have int in front of my input statement? It's an integer. And if I don't put int there, it won't add these, right? Let me see if I can find how to make my output. I had trouble with it. I think it's preferences. Copy. I thought that was under edit. There it is. Okay. My output is not very big, so I'm trying to find out how to change that so when I run it, you can see it. Editor. Code style. Live, let me see. You can't see it. Well, you'll have to open your till I figure out how to. Let me see. There's got to be a way, because down here when it runs, I've got the font large enough you can see this, but down here you can't see when it runs. But okay, if I take integer off, I want to show you what happens. Well, first I'll run it this way. Okay, when I run it this way, it's going to come up and tell me. This says, please enter a value, because that's what I put between quotes right up here, right? So it says, please enter a value. I'm going to enter, say, 5 and hit enter. And now it says, please enter a second value, because that's what I say here. So that's going to, whatever I enter is going to go into num2. So I'll say 10. And hit return, and it gave me 15 and -5 because I did num1 minus num2, right? I'm going to change that. Let me do it this way. So if I say 2 and 1, it won't be negative. So now if I say run, enter a value. Now if I use those same numbers, oops. What did it do? Oh, it didn't. It didn't give me time to do it. Just a second. If I go run, why didn't it have me save it? Okay, it didn't have me save. I don't know if it got it. Second value 10. Yeah, so now my answer is 15 and 5, because 5 plus 10 is 15, and then 10 minus 5 is 5. So it printed both answers there. Now, if I take this int off, it's still going to run, but watch what, I'll tell you what happens. Okay, so now if I say run, please enter a value. I'm going to enter the same values, 5 for num1 and 10 for num2. And it says unsupported operand types for string and string. So see, it's trying to add 2 strings and subtract 2 strings because I didn't tell it. So there, even though I didn't have to declare it in Python, I do have to convert it because it isn't an integer unless I tell it it's an integer, right? So let me do this where you can see the output better. I'm going to do it in idle just a second because I know I have it large somewhere here. Come on. There it is. Oops, I said I have it large. I did. Okay, let's see. Format. Okay, I thought I already had it fixed big, but I didn't, I guess. Font size down to like, I think I do like 22. Apply. Can y'all see that now? Can you see that, Brianna? Does it need a little bigger? Okay. We go down to 25 and see that, Ethan?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that good? Okay, so now in idle, when I run this, now you'll be able to see what it looks like because PyCharm, I couldn't figure out how to get that bigger at the bottom. So here, I'm just going to say exercise 1 and save it. So now when it runs, it comes up and says, please enter a value. So if I enter 5 and I enter 10, there's my answers, 15 and 5. So I know my pseudocode works because these two statements are the ones that weren't in my pseudocode. These are exactly like what my pseudocode was, right? And then this is the same as my pseudocode, except I said output. And you'll notice the key words. They're magenta, right? Int, input, print, okay? So now we're going to do the one that we just looked at in chapter 2. I'm going to create a new file. You can do it in PyCharm if you want. And it says it's a doubling program. So I'm going to have one input number, and then I'm going to multiply by 2, right? So here I'm going to actually, because
Which problem is this?
this is actually, no, it's not in MindTap. This is actually the one, well, it's the one in the book that we just saw that was the number doubling program. So it said to take a number, and it made declarations too. I'm just going to take this one because I don't want to type it up again. Okay, so I'm going to put, please enter a value, and then all I have to do is take my answer 1 is equal to num1 times 2. And you don't have to put all those spaces in there. I just did that. Print my answer 1. So that's all there is to the doubling one. So if I say run, and this is double, I'll just call it double program, save. Now, when I run it, please enter a value. Let's say I put 10. If it's doubled, it's 20, right? So that's the type of a program when you take your test 1, I'll tell you there'll probably be more than one input, but you'll input. The thing that you have to remember is if it's got a calculation, you have to do this. But one thing about the test is that I let you look at these problems, okay? You don't have to clear everything off. You just can't talk to another person by text or any other way. Okay, I want it to be your work, but you have resources because even when you become a programmer, you don't have to keep it all up here. All of the syntax rules you can Google, right? The only thing that you can't Google is what we're doing in this class. Normally, you can't Google how to solve a problem. You've got to understand the logic, what it takes to solve the problem. That's why this class is important, because you can Google all the Python rules or the Java rules, or you can look them up at a website, or you can look at examples, but there's not very many examples of exact logic. Now, these simple ones there are, but that's not always going to be the case.
So how would you set that up at the beginning as well? Like we put your declarations or...
Oh, you mean in your pseudocode?
Yeah, because do you put that in Python as well, like your statement?
You don't have to,
Okay.
but a lot of students, we do that because it helps you to know whether it's commented right. So you could say declarations, And then you have to, the thing about this is that we're going to learn some other comments, because this one I can't just put them right under there. That won't be the beginning and the end. I'd have to go down here and put another slash, but there's a way to put comments that'll go multiple lines. We just haven't talked about that yet. So this one doesn't have the declarations. It's too simple. Okay. All right. So now we're going to go back here to a little bit more of this chapter, because it's important when we talk about the numeric variables and the string variables, and type safety just means putting the type out there. So numeric variables hold digits that can perform mathematical operations on it. String variables can hold text, letters of the alphabet, special characters such as punctuation marks, or numbers that aren't used for mathematical operations. So we've talked about the identifier, we've talked about keywords. So all the things that I've been talking about is just emphasized in the chapter, okay? So if you have questions about it, these are important, how you name your variables. That's something that I'm going to look at too, because certain variable names, you cannot put a space in a variable name. There were some students, I think it was about online, that did that, where if there's a space, it doesn't know they're connected as the variable name. So it must be one word, it must start with a letter, and should have some appropriate meaning. So here's all the different styles. Well, there's the ones. We've talked about camel casing, where instead of putting a space, if it's a two-word variable name, you can start just the second word with a capital. Pascal is actually a programming language. It used to be a learning language. It's not used very much anymore. But if you capitalize both words in a variable name, that's called Pascal. Hungarian notation is where if you want to also, as part of the variable name, you want to tell what the data type is. So like, for instance, in Python, because it's not required, but you maybe want to get used to coding the data type, you can make it part of the variable name. Okay, just so there's not any spaces in there. Then there's something called snake casing, which I've talked about this a lot of times. I use an underscore where a space would be, because sometimes it's easier for some people to read that way rather than putting this letter capital and pushing them together. Then there's also underscores used with mixed case. And then this is called kebab. You very seldom see a hyphen in variable names. People usually don't use that, but it is something that you can do. Now, we've already talked about how the equal sign is an assignment operator. Is an assignment operator. In other words, it's not comparison. It doesn't say this is this side equal to this side. It's saying take what my number is, multiply it by 2, and dump it in this variable on this side. And this side of the equal sign is called the L value, which stands for left value, right? So it's a binary operator because it takes two parts, something on the right side and something on the left side. And that's all this part's about, I think. Okay, and here's where I talked about initializing the variable, because if there's not anything in there, sometimes what the unknown value we refer to as garbage. You ever heard of garbage in, garbage out? That's what it's talking about. If you just assume that there's nothing in that memory location, then you're assuming that there's not any garbage sitting out there. That's how that term is used. Named constant, but we're not going to deal with magic numbers. They're kind of odd. We don't use them in Python anyway. So a named constant, we're going to do a MindTech problem here in just a second with a constant, but it's similar to a variable. can be assigned a value only once. Assign a useful name to a value that will never be changed during a program's execution. And what that means is that I can't change it when I run it, but I can change it and run the program again. It's just meaning that it will not change throughout the execution of that run. Okay, so let's everybody go to MindTap, and we're going to do 2 of the problems in chapter 2. Has anyone done the problems in chapter 2? Oh, it looks like my, no, I hope that doesn't run out of battery. Okay, so we're going to go over to where MindTap chapter 2, the coding. And you'll notice these aren't due till after the, no, these are due right before the test, I think. Yeah, 16th. So Monday in my 9:30 class, if you have trouble, the only 2 that we're probably going to get to, unless you guys are just really good, is these 2. And then these, these 2 are just like what will be on the test too. Those are things that can be on the test, okay? Not this exact problem. You'll have different problems, but I mean sequential statements or assignment operators. We're using all of those. So if we don't get to these, you can do them on your own, or you can wait till I post that lecture on either Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning for the 9:30 class, because I'll do them in class, whatever we don't get done here. Okay, so if you're in MindTap, let's click on this. This is the time where MindTap is where it gives you fits sometimes. The way if you put a space in the wrong place, or you don't put a plus sign where it needs to go, that's why I do these together in class. But if sometime you're not in class and you try to do it and you know you're getting the right answer over here in the terminal, but it's still telling you over here not 100%, then you can copy this and put it in PyCharm and run it. And if you can get a good run, then you do a screenshot for me and send it when I give you 100%. Okay, I'll show you. But here, I've already done this one for you. But yours doesn't have, let me take these out. Okay, that should be what yours looks like, right? Okay, so what it tells us to do is assign an integer variable named my current age with your current age in years. And then assign an integer variable named current year with the value of the current year. Use 4 digits for the year and then execute the program. So right up here under, you see the comment is a pound sign. In Python, that means comments. See how they're grayed out? That means the program doesn't use those lines of code. When it runs, it only uses these. But this is for the programmer. It says, this program calculates your age in the year 2050. So you can put a hashtag, if that's what you want to call it. Well, I used to call it the number sign. When you're old, that's what you call it, not hashtag, okay? So this is hashtag here, here, and here just simply tells you what this program is going to do. Then on line 5, they say, create your variables here. So here is where it tells you to create a variable called my current age. So I do my current age, and then you actually give it a value. We're not asking the user to input. We're saying give it a value. Oh, and you guys can't see back there. Let's see if I can make it bigger. Okay, so we're saying my current age equals, and then you actually put your age as if you were asking an input statement and it was going to flash back to you. So you put your current age, and then you go here and you say, the other variable says to put one called current year, right? So we're going to say current year, and it needs to be spelled just like it is here, see, because that's what it's going on. It's going in that and that. So this value, my current age, is going to be put in this variable when it runs, and this current year is going to go in this variable when it runs. Okay, now in MindTap, did y'all get that? Everybody get it? So now in MindTap, we're going to go over here and select these three little lines. And those three little lines, you have to click Run Checks. And if those all come up with a green check mark, then you should get the Submit 100% button. And then also you can run it over here to see what the answer is. You can click on that and it tells you how it runs. Does anybody need help getting 100%?
No, I have a question.
You have a question. Okay.
Yes, the hashtags over there, they are declarations, right?
Or comments.
Are comments?
Yeah.
Declarations are comments.
Yes,
Okay.
declarations are comments. Declarations are a specific kind of comment that declares the variables.
What if I write my current age and my current year in declaration?
Then it wouldn't have, it would, okay, try that.
Okay.
Put a pound there and see what happens. Then just hit the run button after you do that. So what Katan's asking is, if I put a pound sign and a pound sign, and I don't have those variables, and I try to run it, it gave me a name error because it doesn't know what those variables are. Because that's a good way to try things. It's always, if you wonder about something, just try it and see what happens. But why did that happen? Why did it give me a name error like that when I ran it with those hashtags there? Anybody know? What? Well, it is, except for, okay, here's what happens. When I put hashtag here and hashtag here, it's a comment, and therefore this error comes up because it doesn't know what current age is, because you didn't declare it, because even though you see it here, Python doesn't see it. Okay, so it says, hey, I don't have a my current age. Don't have one. So right here, we declare it, and so that's how it runs. Everybody else get 100%? Okay. Any other questions? Quinn, you had a question? No? Okay. I'm trying to read faces. It's hard to tell. I try to see if you have a question. Okay. So we're going to click out of this one then, and it recorded your score. Now we're going to assign constants in Python. This one's a little bit harder. We had a lot of trouble with this in the 9:30 class. Anytime now. There it is. I'll make it a little bit small first so I can read this. So in this one, it's still called New Age 2, but we're going to calculate your age in the year 2050. So we're going to assign a constant named year. Now, these are not here in yours, I think. Are those values there or no?
Yeah, there's some value.
Okay, so the constant is here. And so instead of typing it in, we're going to put 2050, assign a constant, named year equal to 2050. And the way I can tell it's a constant, because it's in all caps, right? It's a variable, but why do I want to make a constant up there? Because every time I run it, it's going to put that there. But why would I not just leave 2050 there? Because you have to change, yours should say 2050 right there, right? Okay. You've got to change it to be that constant. Now, when it runs, it's going to put 2050 there. And the reason that's a big deal, the reason you would want to use a constant and learn how to use a constant is because if this program had 200 lines and maybe in line 50, 80, 90, it had 2050. And maybe I miss one of them and I want to go up here and I want to change this to 2080. Well, I would have to go down every line and change 2080. But if I use this variable, this constant variable in line 80, line 150, all of the places that 2050 is, then I only have to change it up here. Right? Make sense? Follow what I'm saying? So let's say, let's just say down here, I'm going to copy this. Let me put this in. I'm going to put it over here in idle and we're going to play with it. Oh, you guys need to see that first. Here, let me make it run for you first so you can get your 100%. Okay, the thing that gives people problems with this one is this line down here. Everything has to be exactly like it's coded. This print statement has to say, I will be space, quote, space, plus, space, string, my new age. Then there has to be a space and a plus and a space, a quote, a space here, the word in, a space here, a quote, another space on each side of the plus sign, string, year. So what we're doing here is we're changing that print statement to include our constant value in it, right?
So what would be the difference in a string and a num right there for the years?
Okay, because when you're printing it out, you're printing out a string. You're not actually it doesn't look at it as a number because you're not doing any calculation on it.
Okay.
Okay, makes sense? Do you hear what Ryan asked? Everybody understand what he asked? Because he wants to know why would you not put num here? Well, because we're not doing a calculation on the year down here. We're just printing it out to the screen so that it labels I will be, and it gives your value of your age, plus it's going to say in whatever year it is, and period. So it's combining strings and variables, what's actually in the variable. So everybody get that? Yes.
I have a problem in printing this. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's what it's so, okay. And here's the other thing. You did print out your code pattern. It says it's expecting a string print. Where is it? Which one is that one in? Prints. Oh, you haven't finished it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to put it like.
Yeah, you have to put it just like.
STR a string right there.
Right.
Okay.
Because what it's wanting to do is it wants that to work even if I go up here and change that year. And so if I go up here and I change this to, say, 2080, I don't have to change any of this down here, right? Now, if you can't get it to run, it's probably the spaces and stuff. This is the one that everybody had trouble with. So you want to be sure that you can make this one run. Usually it's that last line there. And what Katan was doing over here, whenever you do the task, if yours does have an error and you do like that, it'll show you a little bit about what was wrong. If you're not getting, like mine says, oh, mine ran. I don't know why it's saying submit. should be saying submit 100%. It's probably because I know why, because I already clicked that. There it is. Submit 100%. So your print statement, this is what's the problem if yours probably. Now, I did have a student in the earlier class that had put year as lowercase down here, and so that was what his problem was. Everybody got it? Anybody need help? No, Tom?
Well, output.
You guys can look at each other. Sometimes other pairs of eyes can see.
Image is
Cool.
incomplete.
Let's see, outputs new age correctly, but then it has something else wrong. Did it go down?
Big.
Okay, micron age, trace back. Okay, it's saying, yeah, there's something about, isn't it this statement? New age, what's this? String new age 2 dot year. How's that mean? Oh, you got to put spaces around the word in.
Oh,
Inside the quotes. No, yeah, inside the quote.
Uh-huh.
Put a space in
Oh.
front of the I and after the N.
okay. Okay, you can,
No, that one I think it'll work.
it's just a dot.
Yeah, I think that one will work without spaces around it. But there has to be a space in front of the I and a space after the N, which it will not be that picky if you were in idle or pie chart.
Gotcha.
That work?
Okay.
Okay, anybody else?
This is next problem.
Oh, we're gonna work on it. Yeah, we're
It doesn't
gonna
work.
think. Oh, we only got 5 minutes. What does it say? Oh, okay, let me show you that one. Okay, the next one. Okay, if like what Jared just did, if you can't get it to get 100% and the due date is before we come to class, then you can do a screenshot of that and you should be able to attach it to the comment in there. Let's see. Let me see how it lets you do that in Canvas. So like, say this one right here, Jared couldn't get it to run, so I need to go to student view so I can see how to do it. But I'm going to do these in class Monday. So if we were working this one, see, that's just going to take it to a new window. Okay, well, it's not due till, let me see, I'm gonna have to figure out how we did that last semester. We did that some. I'll probably have to put an assignment box for those that I don't have here if you can't get it to run. But if we go over, okay, let me leave student view. Let's go over to MindTap and see if we can figure out that one. That one is, that Jared's doing was this one, and he got it to run in PyCharm. And it even in MindTap, the run works, but it gives him code checks over here. Okay, I'm going to cheat a little bit because I have it already done. Oh, not there. If anybody needs to leave before we're done, that's fine. Let's see. Oh, I know where those are. Why didn't I do that? Fundamentals, CIT, blah, blah, blah. Chapter 2, and it's the one called furniture. Okay, here's where it goes. let's see if these are, there's how that one should be. Do you have anything different, Jared? Well, I bet there's something here, though. There's probably a space, or do you have to put spaces around the plus signs, both sides of the plus signs? Where does it tell you on the task that when you ran it in one tab? Okay, so let's see. Results. You don't have to. Okay. Yeah, just if I don't put an assignment, when are these due? These aren't due till the 16th, right? Okay. So I will go over on Monday. I'm going to put mine in there and see if it runs. See if I did it right. Oh, that did twice. Write a assignment. Oh, mine's already done. Let me see. No, mine didn't run either. I must have something wrong in there.
Yeah, I think that's like a same error.
Profit 125. Yeah, those are crazy.
I don't see that you have any statements.
Do what?
Like these statements.
Did you get yours to run?
Yeah.
Oh, you sure did.
I don't know how to.
Go back to it. Yeah. Click, oh, mine's starting at 10. And then we've got, what was different? Let me go back to my idle one and you show me what was. Where was it? Right here. This is it. That's it. So
Yeah, you don't have profit equals retail price minus wholesale price.
we're right.
When it says hashtag write your assignment statements here.
Now, which one is it?
The second half.
This one?
The second one.
In the print right here?
No, the hashtag. It says
Oh.
profit equals. I didn't see those three statements on
The problem?
Mind App.
Oh, on Mind Tap you didn't?
Or like you didn't.
Oh, you mean right here in Mind? Oh, you're right. I don't have them in here. Okay, so let me, oh, I see what it is. Let me, I couldn't see all of it, so I was, is yours on another one, Ethan, that you're having trouble with? Or is it this one?
I ran everything correctly, but I had the wrong, like, all the, it's all correct, but the numbers are wrong, I feel like.
Okay, you mean over here is wrong, or when you do it here and do the run checks are wrong?
I don't know what I did wrong. Like I got the sale price and the sale profit was wrong, but it ran correctly.
Okay, this one is right. So if you copy it, just like this, Sebastian,
If we finished it, can.
Yes.
So I have a class too.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you go ahead. Okay, Ethan, you're talking about this one? Or the
Yeah.
other problem? Okay, so,
This one.
okay, so what did yours do? So if you can read this on idle, this is what I did exactly. So yours has to have gear to space or something that's making mine hot, Pat. I can send those too. I can just those up there, exactly.
Oh, wait, okay, so 2025, I just like
Okay, but if you minus, you would be minus, you'd have to do another calculation.
Okay.
Right?
But the sale profit is wrong.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you look at 75 and still running.
Let's see. Yeah, if anybody needs to go, you guys are free to go. I'm working with. Yeah, it is supposed to be 243. So, okay, which is it, what is this is different? Do you have this up? Do you have this, Ethan, 325 and 200? Retail times 0.75. Let's see. Did you get it?
I have a class too.
Oh, okay.
I did not get it.
Okay, well, and not I will also send this one of mine that works. I'll post it in here. Let me do that right now. I will post it right here below. What's it? It's this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will post my file that works.
And we have class at 9:30 on Monday.
Yes, I do. Yeah, anybody that wants to be here 9:30 on Monday, or I'll post the lecture, either way. Sign that file, new file. Let me see if it's in here already. No, it's not. Whoa, new file. Why is it not letting me add it? Oh, select the file to add a file. I'm selecting new file. Okay, come on. Guess it's not gonna let me. Let me go up here. But Miguel, you got it. So that next one, so you understood it correctly.
I want to talk to you because I misread the assignment on Canvas and I didn't do the test number 2.
You didn't do test number 2. Okay, I think a couple of other people didn't, but always they'll be on the Monday. Okay, I'll open it till tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Let's see here. There it is. Add item.